I'm standing in the middle of a dream. A lost dream, really. A dream of a Christian Roman Empire. A dream based on the books of the Holy Bible. The dream was made about 1,500 years ago, around 450 AD. The Roman Empire's under attack. For safety, its Christian emperors have moved the capital here, to the North Italian city of Ravenna, deep in the malarial marshes of the River Po. This dream of paradise, far away from such earthly torments, is in the tiny chapel where the last great emperors of the Western Empire were laid to rest. This is a funeral vault. The most remarkable person in here, so legend tells us, is an empress, Galla Placidia. She's supposed to be buried in this sarcophagus. Legend says she sat bolt upright until a few hundred years ago when somebody shoved a candle in to take a look at her and she went up in smoke. She lived an amazing life, this woman. She was taken in shackles across the Pyrenees, she went to Constantinople, she invaded Italy, and she ruled the empire for 25 years. But there's not a name on the sarcophagus, and there's nothing about her deeds on her little niche. Just a picture of St. Lawrence. It's a bit of a legend, but Lawrence was a deacon of the early church. In the time of persecution, he was ordered by his persecutors to produce the treasures of the church. And Lawrence took some poor families along to them and got grilled for his trouble. You can see his grill up there. It's that act of humility and of Christian love, you might say, a demonstration of Christian love that these mighty people wanted in their tomb. It's a really rather moving, a sort of profound change from the old classical temples. Of course, it's still in the classical tradition, but it's a Christian world now. But this sort of Christianity was really doomed. This is its end, its swan song, its dream, really. Christianity was changed really because of the barbarism that followed. It was an age when the Bible stopped being used by clever people in clever ways and changed to being used as a book full of images. Those books over there that are firmly shut on the bookcase, it's a sort of little bibliographic monument almost, were now opened up and their images flooded over the West. And it was these images that people seized. They were simple people, and they seized the pictures and the stories of the Bible, and they not only used it for eternal life, for the promise of eternal life, but they also used it to buttress the ideas of earthly power. The emperors took over the images of the Bible. That's what the next 1,500 years of this story is all about. Well, this monster was built about 520 AD. That's about 75 years after Galla Placidia's beautiful mausoleum. It was built to house the mortal remains of a king, an emperor, called Theodoric the Goth. Of course, Theodoric was a Goth, was a barbarian. He was one of the members, a prince indeed, of the tribes that were coming down from Asia into Europe. They destroyed the empire of the West like children would destroy a watch, by ignorance and barbarism, basically. The Roman Empire wasn't like a fort. It didn't fall overnight. It was slowly infiltrated by these great barbarous hordes. I can't help thinking that Theodoric's tomb is a bit like the emperor himself, a sort of terrible mix of classicism and barbarism. Theodoric took over Italy after bumping off his predecessor at a particularly heavy banquet. He ruled the country from Ravenna, Galla Placidia's elegant old palace. But these weren't Romans, these were barbarians. They didn't know how to behave, they didn't know how to frame laws, and they didn't know how to appear imperial. So they got some senators up from Rome to teach them the rules of the game. And I can't think they'd have approved of this much. Theodoric was actually buried in a bath. One of them actually said, "You are like Orpheus trying to tame the wild beasts." But it really didn't work. One by one, they got caught up in the sort of suspicious tribal courtly politics of Ravenna. One was clubbed to death, another was strangled. But one of them, Cassiodorus, managed to get away to the south. And with him, he took the most precious thing he could find in the whole world, the ancient text, the seed of the ancient world, all the ancient books. He had a great plan. He started up a monastery in the south of Italy, and there he got a lot of scribes to copy these texts out again in their most perfect versions, correcting all the grammar, correcting all the punctuation and spelling to preserve the old world. Now, for our point of view, the most important texts he took were the Bible texts, the different books of the Bible which had been translated by Jerome hundreds of years earlier for the Pope and had been used in all the Western churches. These Cassiodorus actually gathered together and put in one book, the first Western Bible book that we know of. It's called a Pandect, a Bible book. And Cassiodorus' Pandect, this marvellous Bible, this marvellous mythical Bible, you might say, because now it's quite gone, was called the Codex Grandior. But gone though it is actually the ancestor of all our modern Western Bibles. But the dream of a Western Christian empire had gone almost as soon as the empire itself had been split in two. The Eastern Empire, though, its old imperial cities embattled and besieged, had kept the barbarians at bay. As the West slowly descended into a terrible, anonymous Dark Age, the old Eastern Empire, the Greek Empire, the empire really founded by Constantine the Great, continued on its way. Its capital, Constantinople, kept back foreign, mostly pagan armies. If you looked over the battlements at that time, you might have seen the silk tents of the Persians beneath, black tents of the Arabs, the Goths, the Bulgarians, all sorts. But none of these armies took it. Not, that is, until 1453, when the Ottoman Turks came over these walls and destroyed the Christian civilization inside. That was an extraordinary civilization. Think of it. In the West, those Dark Ages produced a sort of dislocation with the past. If people after the Dark Ages wanted to think about classical antiquity or the age in which the Bible was written, or even its language, Greek, which practically nobody knew, they had to sort of reinvent it. It was a different age. But here, that past was part of the present. The old classical world continued. People still kept talking Greek. They went to chariot races. They knew all about the classical gods. They read Greek philosophers. They were able to read the New Testament in Greek, the language in which it had been written. Constantinople may have been founded by a Western emperor, but it always looked towards the east. The city spanned Europe and Asia. Here it was, the Roman culture met and mixed with the East. And it made a form of Christianity that Jesus of Nazareth, himself an Easterner, could have recognized and understood. And as the Western Empire dissolved, this city became the heart of the Roman Empire. An exotic, impenetrable, part legendary city, called sometimes by its old Greek name of Byzantium. Constantinople was the greatest city in the world. The Greeks that lived here said it was the eye of all cities. And in fact, it took most of the Eastern Empire just to support it. It was a very violent city. It was a city of huge marble palaces, of circuses, of lethal court politics, and very violent crowds that used to rush around, killing and destroying, it seemed, at the slightest whim. And yet at the same time, this violent city was also a very religious one. It was said that when you went to a grocer to buy a loaf of bread, you were just as likely to get it stuck into a big theological argument as you were about the price of the loaf. Westerners who came here
found it a very exotic, very mysterious place. Lots of ambassadors came here for various reasons over the centuries. They left us letters of their accounts, and they're quite extraordinary documents. First of all, as they came towards the city, they talk about its smell, because all of Constantinople used to flavour its food with a fish sauce made from the brown juice of rotten fish. The Westerners didn't like that very much. Neither did they like the terrible garlic that was everywhere. Already, by the 6th century, Byzantium had made its own style of food and architecture too. The city was rich, prosperous and growing. The vast imperial church of Hagia Sophia, consecrated in 537, loomed over its palaces